I don't like doing the math in order to get to the goal. I like knitting to the goal, if that makes sense. I do enough math in my day-to-day that I don't always want to do all the math here. Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kristen. I'm a knitter living in Denver, Colorado, and Knit Life Balance is my little corner of the internet where I share with you how knitting and other fiber crafts have woven into my life. Today's video is my March 2026 recap, so I'm going to share with you all of my finished objects, projects that I'm currently working on, and yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have today. I don't really have any announcements here at the beginning. As always, you can follow me on all of my social medias. I am Knit Life Balance most places. There's a link tree in the description box if you'd like to follow me on Instagram, Ravelry, YouTube, Blue Sky, all of those places. And then I also link to all my Ravelry project pages, and there are timestamps down below if you ever need to jump around or are interested in certain parts of the video and not others. Otherwise, I really don't have a ton at the beginning to chat about, so we can dive right on into all of the making from March. I keep wanting to say April. I cannot believe we're already in April in 2026, but here we are. So it is a kind of an overcast day here in Denver. It's not very common. We don't get many overcast days. I feel like it's a very sunny city. I think it's one of the sunniest. So when we get overcast days like this, I really enjoy them because I tend to miss them. So that's kind of the vibe we have today. We're gonna do kind of a chill podcast. It's a little bit after lunch, and I'm just excited to sit and chat with you today. I definitely can tell as I've spaced these podcasts out, I get a little more of an itch to share. I want to talk about all the things that I have going on. So we can go ahead and dive right on in. I do want to start with a little bit of what I am wearing today. I am wearing some handmade pants. So I'll stand up and see if I can get them on the camera. May not be able to see them completely, but these are my berry pants, which is a pattern by Style Arc. These are pants that I made out of some warp and weft. I got this fabric when I was working at Fancy Tiger, and this was the very first time maybe this was the second time I sewed these pants, but I made no modifications. They are this barrel leg pant. They have a slight pleat at the bottom, and then they have this ruffle top. I think they're very cute. I think these are probably my favorite pant patterns that I've made. They have an elastic waist. The ruffle top I think is cute, although I think that is something in my future ones that I am planning to omit maybe a little bit more, just because I find the ruffle top a little hard to style. But I do really like how the pockets are built in. Essentially you have this pocket seam here, and so it's kind of like this triangle design. They're like not in the side seam, they're a little showy, so I think that looks really neat. I like the barrel leg. They're not too wide, but they're not like straight leg, and they have the slight pleat at the bottom, which is cute. I have remade these recently, and when I remade them I did lengthen them by about 3 inches in the leg, because the pattern as written, I don't know if it's because of the pattern it's written that they're like an ankle length, but when I've looked at the project photos, they do kind of seem like they are more of an ankle length pattern, which is great for the summer when I'm wearing sandals. However, like this pair specifically, I really like to wear them in the winter because they're just a little bit darker. So I did lengthen the legs on a future pair that I have made recently. And I do like that. I do think 3 inches may be a little too much. I think 2.5 will kind of be my magic length with these. And what I was going to say is I don't know if it's because the pattern is written as ankle length, or if I tend to wear these a bit higher. I tend to wear them more high-waisted to kind of raise the crotch as well up. So it's probably a combination of the pattern is probably a little more of an ankle length pattern, plus I'm wearing them a little bit higher on my waist versus my hips. So I think that's it contributing to it being just a little bit shorter than I like, but I still wear these all the time. Like I said, I do think these are some of my go-to. This is probably my favorite pants pattern that I've made. So that's what I'm wearing today. I'm just wearing it with a t-shirt that I picked up from Old Navy. And yeah, that is what I'm wearing. As I mentioned, one of my goals for this year is to share a little bit more about my sewing. So I figured, well, I'm wearing some hand knit or handmade pants today, so maybe I'll share those. It is a weird season where like it's like too warm to wear my long sleeve sweaters, but like I could wear a cardigan today. It's just like it's warm, but it's not super warm, so I figured handmade pants is the way to go today. With all of that being said, the only finished objects that I have from March are some sewing finished objects. In March, I decided to take like my first quarter PTO. My company does trusted time off, but I'm trying to do some time off every quarter as kind of just a good milestone for myself to make sure I'm taking adequate breaks. So I took that during a week in March. I took 6 days off in a row. So I took like 4 work days plus a weekend to get 6. And really during that time, I spent a lot of time sewing that weekend. I only have one of the items that I made to show you today, and I'll kind of explain. So the first item that I made was a Donny Shirt, and I made this with some leftover cotton. It was a cotton bed sheet because I was testing out a pattern. I wanted to see how I thought about the fit. I don't have that one to show you because I wore it earlier this week, so it is currently in the dirty clothes. But overall, it's a pattern by Friday Pattern Company. You should see that again in the future, and hopefully Kristen will also actually get some photos and post them on Instagram. But I do really like that pattern. It's like a V-neck woven shirt. I have a really hard time fitting woven shirts to my body, specifically just because I think I have pretty narrow shoulders relative to my bust. I usually make somewhere between an extra, extra large, 1X, extra large area. And I've just always really struggled fitting tops, which is why I usually sew pants. Long story short, I am really happy with how the Donny Shirt came out. I have some additional fabric that I am planning to make another. The first time I made it, I made the extra, extra large. And I do like how that pattern fits. It's a little more fitted, but with my second attempt, I'm using some older fabric, but I know it'll fit, so I'm using some fabric that I'm excited to make a shirt out of. It's not a bed sheet this time. But I'm gonna make the 1X size, because I'm just gonna see how I like that fit comparatively to the extra, extra large. The extra, extra large fits. I think it looks really nice on my frame. The only thing is like when I do like this kind of motion, you know, when you kind of like, not that you ever really hug yourself, but then that's where like the back gets a little tight. So that's where I'm kind of seeing, and it is like an oversized shirt, and I did it a little less oversized. So I'll just say, I'm gonna try sewing the next size up, see which kind of size I prefer. And then I just picked up some different fabric yesterday that I adore, and that when I saw it, I was like, I want to make this shirt. So I'm just using some less precious fabric to figure out sizing, and then I'm making another with that. And my future editions, I'll probably come back and show you kind of all of them. It's just kind of still a work in progress in the sense of I'm sewing some more. My first one is just in the wash today. So that was the first thing I sewed. Then I sewed some knit t-shirts, and that was the Jessie tee by True Bias, and it is essentially just like a plain t-shirt. That I really loved sewing. I sewed 2 of them. It is a knit, so it's like a basically t-shirt you would get from a store, and it has both a full length and a cropped, and I did the crop. I love the shirt so much, and it is also such an easy sew because you essentially zip the shoulder seams together, you fit in the sleeve, and you sew around the sleeve edge, and then you sew down the side seams. Then you press your collar, you attach the collar, you press the bottom hem, you sew the hem. It is such a quick sew, and a great one if you've not sewn with knits, or you're new to a serger. So I really like those. I have worn them though, and I've decided they're just about 2 inches too short for me to feel comfortable. It's one of those, I could probably wear it with like the berry pants I have today because they're a little bit higher. However, it's like any lifting of the arms means that shirt is going to show my belly. And I just felt like I was constantly tugging it down just a little bit. And for cropped, I really like things to hit at my belly button. And so it's about 2 inches shy of that. However, I have leftover fabric from both of those shirts. So what I'm planning to do is I'm going to cut a nice little band for the bottom, and I'm going to sew some extra length on as kind of like a wide, it's not going to look like ribbing, but kind of like a wide band kind of idea. I hope it doesn't look stupid in the end. But again, the first fabric that I used is some fabric that I had. It's not as precious to me, so I'm going to try it with that one first, kind of see how I like. And then the fabric that, it's also not super precious, but I wouldn't want to, like, if I don't like the adjustment, I won't do it on the second one. But so I know which one I'll do first. So again, that is something else that I sewed, however, don't have it show you. So hopefully this isn't too boring so far. And then the third thing I sewed was I sewed some bob pants, which are these. They are very similar to the berry pants, however, the waistband just doesn't have that ruffle. And then the pockets are fully in the side seam versus it being kind of that diagonal. So I sewed these out of a bed sheet because I was testing. I've made these pants before. I've made it a couple times. These are my third time making these pants, and I do really like them. However, the crotch has just been too low. And so these are my test of figuring out, of shortening kind of the rise on the pant. Well, not the rise, because that's where the waistband sits, but I was physically shortening like the amount from the waist down to your crotch. So I shortened this by 3/4 of an inch on both the front pieces and the back pieces. And I do think that fit looks a lot better. I think the next time I do it, when I will do the decrease to 1 inch instead of 3/4 of an inch. I just didn't want to overshoot it the first time. But I think that's kind of my happy spot for these. When I shortened it in the crotch though, I did lengthen that amount in the leg, so I will do that in the future. I did sew on a little Katie and the Machine little logo here in the back. It says finished just in time. I just thought the green was cute. But this was 100% cotton bed sheet. And so it definitely feels like a bed sheet. This one feels a little bit lighter. I think with the striping too, it is just a little casual. So these are not going to be out and about pants, but they are some new like pajama pants, because that is what they feel like to me. They're pretty comfortable. They're kind of wrinkly because they've been worn a couple of times, but they're fun. It was a good way to test out the sizing of these, see how I felt in them, and yeah. One thing that I still need to work on from my pants is when I sew down these waistbands, I usually do it from the wrong side. And so with that, you usually can see like my stitching line from stitching down the waistband is not in like the ditch of the seam. You can see it a little better here. So like my seam line is here and then the fold line is there. I know no one is ever going to see it, but that is a skill that I would like to work on a little bit. I only just get hesitant sewing from the right side to try to catch the fold over. So when I've done that in the past is sometimes I don't catch the waistband. and that bugs me. So I usually sew it from the wrong side to make sure that I'm catching the waistband, but then I get the stitching line kind of not always. Doesn't always look the tidiest. So I'm still trying to figure that out. Sewing is not my like. I'm still figuring it out. I am not a pro advanced sewer. I am, if anything, advanced beginner, maybe intermediate, but there's some finishing that we can do. We're just now getting into fitting and figuring it out. But overall, I did really enjoy like my little sewing weekend sprint. I am feeling a draw to sew some more. Like I have plans of projects that I want to make. And yeah, it's just been fun. And I think with the warmer weather, not that we really had any cold weather, but I do tend to lean towards some sewing in the warmer months. So I think we'll see a little bit more of that. I am excited to kind of take time this weekend to try to lengthen those t-shirts and hopefully like have an idea of how I'm going to do it, and I'm hoping it plays out the way I anticipate, because those t-shirts were cute and I would like to wear them. And I have a ton of fabric stash, so I am trying to just work through some of it. And Threadloop is the website I am using to kind of track my sewing projects. So if you are interested in seeing some of my sewing projects, some of the sewing notes, I will link those down below as well. I will admit I have not made any of these on Threadloop yet. However, keep an eye out. I should be getting them soon. So that's my finished objects, my sewing bit for this video. Hopefully you aren't feeling too deterred because I haven't talked about any knitting so far, but we are going to move right on into the knitting as I show you my works in progress. Didn't finish any knitting objects last month, but I have some exciting progress to show you on what I am working on. So for this first one, I think I'm gonna pop it on a try-it-on tubing. That way I can do a little try-on for you, but I can start chatting about it while I get this transferred over. So my first work in progress that I'd like to show you that I've been knitting on is my Popham Pullover by Alicia Plummer. So this is a worsted weight, bottom up, quarter zip, or like button band type sweatshirt. It is knit with worsted weight. I might have already said that, but I am knitting the size E, which is going to be about 51 3/4 inches, which will be about 9 inches of positive ease from my upper chest and then 6 inches of ease from my full bust. I am using 4.5mm needles on this, and I started the pattern January 2nd. And so this pattern has gotten a lot of work. I did not show it in the last podcast episode because I hadn't worked on it since I had recorded. But I have quite a bit to show you today. I have done a lot. So let me get this over. And this is where I am at. I think what I might do is I'm gonna grab my bust form really quick and we are gonna pop it on there. Ta-da! So this is my Popham pullover so far. The last time I recorded and I showed this, I was right here. So I was still working on the body, but I was very, very close to splitting for sleeves. A little bit of an inch here. So I continued knitting about 1 inch of the body, and then we split for the sleeves. So since this is knit bottom up, once you split for the sleeves, you put the front or back stitches on hold, you knit the front or the back, and then you knit the other. I think the pattern is written that you do the front first, but I knew that I was going to add bust darts, so I decided to do the back first because it was a little bit easier and my brain could do that at that point versus doing some thinking. So I knit the back panel to the length recommended. There's a little bit of short rows here. The pattern has written Japanese short rows, and that was this is the first time I've ever done it, so I have linked on my Ravelry project page. There were 2 tutorials I kind of looked at, and one that I liked a little bit more. So I do have that linked on my Ravelry page for the like blog post tutorial that I used, because I kind of prefer that when I need something during a pattern to reference. I like having pictures and scrolling. I think a video is good. Videos are good too, but sometimes when I'm knitting, I like a little blog post so I can scroll and reference very quickly. So that is what I found. So when it came to knitting the back, that was very easy. I did go down a needle size when I started knitting flat. So the body was knit on 4.5 millimeters, which was a US 7. When I started knitting flat, I switched to a 4 millimeter or a US 6. Then came the front. So as you can see, there is a little split here. This thing is knit at the end, so I'll move that out of the way. There's a split here. But before you do that, I did add, as soon as I did my split for the sleeves, I did my bust darts. I am working kind of on a calculator type thing for some bust darts. I don't know how I add them in, but I'm still kind of working out the kinks. But I added roughly, I think I added 2 inches of bust darts. So it was 6 wraps per side. I do shadow wrap short rows when I do those. And so I did all of that. Once those were done, that is then when I started following the instructions as written for the front. So there is some, order of operations, body, short rows, following the patterns for the front. So there is some armhole shaping that you do. Once the armhole shaping is done, you can see it's kind of like this. It's just some slight decreases. Once the armhole shaping is done, you tend to put like half of these on hold, and then you continue doing some of this shaping up, and then there is some neckline shaping up here, up to the shoulder, which goes all the way to here. It's a little bit on the back. The shoulder seam is a little on the back versus like on top of your shoulders. So I followed that as written to the pattern, did it on both sides. And when I did this initially, it has a certain number of rows. And so I knit that number of rows. And then I went and you go and you pick up the collar, and the collar has a number of rows. And I was looking at it, and this whole thing, I have a picture of me wearing it at this point too. So that whole thing was about 10 and a half inches. And the pattern, because I'm doing a quarter zip, the pattern calls for a zipper length of 8 inches. And so my 8-inch zipper is not going to close a 10-inch opening because it's 2 inches too short. So, you know, I kind of re-looked at the pattern and tried to think and do some math, and I like took the number of rows that were recommended for here, divided it by the row gauge of the pattern, and determined, you know, like my section here before the collar was about 8 inches. And I think the math was closer to 5.5 or 6. So what I ended up doing is I ripped both of the fronts back to this part where I was knitting flat for the recommended rows, but I changed it to the recommended length based on that row gauge. So again, if it was, say it was 40 rows, you have 10 rows per inch, that's 4 inches. So I kind of did that math. That is not the math from the pattern, but I did that math to determine what this length should have been. I ripped it back to that point, and then I redid the shaping for the neckline. Then for the collar as well, what I did for this is I took whatever this length was, and then I knit the collar until this whole thing was about 8 inches. So my collar is a few rows less than what's recommended, but my overall length should fit my zipper. I don't know how well you can see that, but the top of my zipper is at the top of my collar. And what I kind of did with this too is I kind of pinned in the zipper here with stitch bulb markers, and then I kind of had it sitting here to then know how long to knit my collar for. Then this little thing that's hanging out is your zipper facing. So you do your tubular bind off or your sewn bind off for the most of the collar, and then you kind of keep these 4 stitches, you knit some ribbing, and then you knit stockinette, and this is going to fold on the inside. And then I'm going to whip stitch the far edge down, and then you're going to sew your zipper in to the little like book that you have. I've decided to not sew this in yet. I have some yarn left over in order to sew it down. But my plan is to, because this is, I feel like I never finished my full sentence. My plan is to block it first because since this is stockinette, it is rolling up, and the idea of sewing it right now seems quite cumbersome. So I've just decided I'm gonna block it all, then I'm gonna sew that down, and I'll sew this in kind of all at the same time. So now it's just kind of hanging out. It looks a little funny, but that is what it is right now. So I did have to knit both these fronts twice. I knit the collar twice. So that was fun. I think that's just part of the joy of bottom up, is sometimes I think the fitting it's a little harder for me. But now I'm working on the sleeve. And so this has been kind of my meeting knitting right now. Based on my row gauge, I did pick up the sleeve stitches for the next size up. I didn't do that intentionally. I was just kind of picking up at the recommended rate, and then my stitch count ended up being the next size up. So now I'm following the decreases for that size. So there are a ton of stitch markers here. Can you see them? So a ton of stitch markers. I have all the ones that I need. There are a lot of decreases, but I guess my sleeve is maybe a little less than halfway at this point. But I know it'll get faster as we go along. And I mean, sleeves are really what are left at this point. So I figured let's do a quick try on and I'll show you how it's fitting. So I have not tried this on since I ripped it back and shortened that length. So this is me. You will get my reaction. I feel like this looks so funny still. But yeah, I think before the ending of the zipper was like really close to like my bust line. And yeah, this sleeve is definitely maybe halfway at this point. It's quite big. I do think the length of the sweater is fitting nicely. I think it's hitting at a nice point. I think my bust darts worked well because you can see there's not a giant rise in the front here. I like how high up this collar goes. The sleeve is making me pause. She is big, but it would be pretty comfortable. So the way the sleeve is written, I was supposed to do a certain number of decreases every 5 rounds, and then I switched to decreases every 6 rounds. And I've just gotten to that, and you can see it. So this little avocado marker. I've only done 3 decreases at the slightly slower rate. So part of me is wondering, do I just go back and just keep decreasing every 5 rounds instead of increasing to every 6? Mostly because I also have shorter arms. And so I do worry that I am going to have to do some sort of rapid decrease at the end. So I'm thinking, as I'm looking here, chatting with you, thinking through my process, I think I am going to rip back those rows and just keep decreasing at a decrease of every 5 rows instead of switching halfway through. Because, yeah. I mean, I do think a wider sleeve isn't going to be bad. If anything, at the end, I will do a rapid decrease to cinch it up at my cuff because I do like a tighter cuff. But because this is like a 1/4 zip and I will be wearing it as like an outer layer, the wider sleeve I think will be fine because I think it'll make it more sweatshirty, and also, I mean, it's like a wide drop shoulder. I think that's just part of the fit. I mean, the only other thing I could do is like go back and decrease every 4 rounds since the beginning. So this is the fit right now. And yeah, you kind of see like the shoulder seam is back here. But I think it looks really nice. I really like the color. I didn't say the yarn is Fiber Hustle Targi in the color 4077. And yeah, I really like how it's looking. I'm really excited to wear this. I'm hoping I can bring it to Flock this year because I bought this yarn at Flock 2 years ago from Fiber Hustle. Fiber Hustle will be there again, so I think it'll all just feel it'll feel like a bookend to this project. So yeah, I had to think about the sleeve a little bit. But yeah, overall I'm really happy with this. So that is my Popham Pullover. So I just looked in the mirror before we move on from this sweater. I looked in the mirror because I can see a little better than my tiny little camera screen. I think I'm gonna restart the sleeve because I think it is bunching weird. I think it's too many stitches. I think it's too much fabric. So I think my plan is I'm gonna try and go back and pick up the recommended number of stitches, which really wasn't that many more. I think it was only 4 or 6 more stitches, but in a worsted weight, that's like an extra inch. So I think I'm gonna go back, try to pick up the recommended number of stitches, and I think I'm gonna try decreasing at a faster rate. Probably even faster than what the pattern is recommending, maybe closer to every 4 rounds. Yeah, I think that might be the plan right now. I might go and try that on this sleeve. Probably cake up another skein from up here. I'm gonna try the pickup on the other sleeve and we'll see how we go. Because I do think it's too much fabric. It also is kind of doing this little like roll over, roll in type thing, which I think would block out. Like I think it would sit flatter. You know, this sweater and I have really gone through it recently with having to redo it and then do it. I feel like everything on the sweater I'm having to do twice. So when it is done, it will feel good. However, I still have more sleeve knitting to do. And I mean, if I pick up less stitches and if I decrease faster, that'll make the sleeve go faster overall. I mean, I really like the project overall. I like how like the little, like the variation, it looks really nice. But yeah, I think the number of stitches I have going on here is just, I'm trying to see, do you kind of see how like the sleeve is? It's like almost pulling in, which makes me feel like I don't have enough stitches. But like when I pull it flat, it's definitely flat, but it wants to like, I don't know. I'm gonna think about it. I do think I need to start over. But that's where I think I'm gonna try picking up less on this side, maybe do an inch or 2, and then I can kind of compare, see how I'm feeling. So yes, this is my Popham pullover. That is where we're at. I mean, I've made great progress in the last month. Basically I've done like the whole top portion. The body was done. So I've done the backs, the fronts, I've started on the sleeves. So really, really great progress. Just some fine tuning to do. With that, we can kind of go on to the other sweater I've been working on. And this is my Kinest Kind by Alicia Plummer. This is also a bottom-up Aran weight sweater, but it is one that I'm knitting for my husband. So this is supposed to be a little bit more of an oversized sweatshirty type sweater, and that's kind of the vibe I'm going for. So this is also knit from the bottom up. I am knitting it in Lion Brand's Fisherman's Wool in the colorway Wool Brown Heather. I've only tapped into my second skein, and I have finished the body as of this morning, and it grows extremely quickly. I'm knitting this on 5mm needles, so US 8 for the main body. For this, I did cast on with a provisional cast on so that I can go back and add the ribbing length to whatever length I need. Again, you knit from the bottom up. It has this little side slip stitch, which is, it's not a slip stitch, but like a side faux seam. I then knit the back panel, and then same idea, you knit the front panels to a certain length. You bind off for the front neck and then do some neck shaping, and then 3 needle bind off to combine the front and back shoulders. For this one as well, I did have to go back and then re-shorten these front pieces because the whole front length from the underarm split to the top is supposed to be about, for this size, 9 1/4. And the first time I did it, I was closer to 10.5 inches. So I went and I took that 1 1/4 inch. I had measured from where my neckline was to 1 1/4 inch below, placed a stitch marker, frogged the side I had done, frogged the whole body back to that 1 1/4 inch, and then redid the neck bind off in order to get a sleeve depth that is more recommended in the pattern. So I did have Shane try this on right before I started recording, and it looks like it's fitting well. I definitely will need to add the length at the bottom. It's not quite as oversized for him. It'll be a little bit more of a fitted sweater, which I think will be okay. And I do think it will grow a smidge with blocking. I think this yarn's gonna bloom. It's gonna stretch out just a little bit. It's also the like steed stitch pattern, so I do think it's gonna relax and grow. I did try it on myself, and it's like that nice sweatshirt for me. So part of me was like, well, Shane, if you don't like it, I will take it. And one of the reasons I am knitting this for him first is I do kind of want to make another one of these for myself. But like I said, I am shorter. So when I tried this on, where the bottom of this is currently hitting without ribbing, that is like the length I would want for myself. So knowing that, whenever I make this for myself, because I would make the same size, I need to subtract. So if this is 12 inches, say, it's from the underarm to the bottom, and I want 2 inches of ribbing, I need to not do 12 inches like this. I need to do 10 inches so that I can add it on for myself. Or I could just start with adding on the ribbing, and my ribbing should be the same length as his body because I'm shorter. But yeah, overall, I mean, now I'm going to be moving on to adding the collar and then adding the sleeves, then adding the hem. I will say one thing that I really prefer about top down is I like to kind of do all this shaping, get to like 1 inch past the sleeves, and then add the sleeves on. I really don't like knitting the sleeves when I have a whole body done, so that is definitely something I don't prefer and something I like a little more. Also, since literally both of these sweaters involve some frogging to like get the fit right. Luckily, like with the front shaping, like it's pretty easy, and in both cases I knit too much, so I had to frog, and then I was just doing the shaping. I didn't need to like add length. But I do think it's a little bit easier when you're starting from here, and then you can kind of figure out how much length you need versus trying to guess how much length you're going to get. I think that's also why I like top-down socks. I don't like doing the math in order to get to the goal. I like knitting to the goal, if that makes sense. I do enough math in my day-to-day that I don't always want to do all the math here. That's why I'm using a pattern. Also, it was annoying with the Popham. My row gauge is the same. We both have 7 rows per inch, so I don't know why my length was different. Physics? I don't know. This is the finest kind. I am really loving it though. And now that I'm kind of back to like top-down world of sleeves, I think this is going to go very, very quickly. I think this will be done by the next time I record. Finest Kind by Alicia Plummer. Started at February 14th, so we're coming up on 2 months here soon. I haven't been working on it the whole time now. It goes so fast. I mean, I did these front pieces in like 2 days. Sorry, the whole like back section and the whole front was like 2 days of knitting, even with me ripping back. All right, that's this sweater. On to the next thing. My next work in progress is my current socks that I'm working on. So these are, again, the vanilla is the new black pattern. So I am doing that strong heel. And yeah, these socks I am using Stranded Dye Works Wash Your Hands, which was a 2020 colorway. I think the colorway is really fun. It kind of reminds me of Space or Chalk. So this first sock, I was here the last time I showed you. So just past the cuff, I have finished the heel increases for the first leg, or for the first sock, and this sock is very, very close to needing me to start the toe. So this one is very close. I then started my second sock, and this one I am currently on those heel increases. So I do have this twice sheared sheet marker. It has like a alternating knit and then a decrease. I'm doing increases. I just don't know where my increase one is, but I know when it's on K for knit, it's a knit, and when it's the D, it's an increase. Also, the KD is kind of cool because those are my initials. So it's still getting the job done. I just think it's a little bit easier for me to have this marker here to kind of remind me versus me having to like read my knitting every time of, was last round an increase round or did I do a knit round? I find having like this little marker a lot easier, especially because I've been knitting on these like in meetings or when we're riding in the car. It's just a little bit easier to have that versus having to like try to read my knitting. Yeah, I mean, I'm still just working on the increases for this one. This one I really just need to like sit down and get a measuring tape and sit and then start the decreases for the toe when I'm ready. But yeah, I mean, I'm really liking this base because it's a BFL nylon blend. I really like BFL for socks. I'm liking how the colors are working up. For these, I did pull some of my oldest stash because that is one of my goals for this year, is to knit through some of my oldest stash. And so I'm just having a lot of fun with these. I don't know if this is a color I would pick like now, but I don't know, it's kind of fun. So yeah, I feel like there's not a ton to say about these. They're just some socks that I'm working on. I do 56 stitches for myself. I'm using a US 0. I do a 2x1 cuff at the top and then 56 stitches for the leg. And then I am modifying the pattern slightly because the smallest size in the vanilla is the new black is a 60 stitch sock. But it's pretty easy to take whatever that smallest size is, and then you can kind of redo the math. I think you basically knit to one, like if you can look at each of the sizes and see like each size has one stitch different, so just subtract a stitch to do a 50 sticks. I hope that kind of makes sense. But yeah, so those are those. They are basically just keeping me company during meetings or car rides. I need to sit down and get the toe on that one here pretty soon. And then my last knitting work in progress is in my redesigned bag. This bag is perfect when you have things that have multiple skeins. So this is my Vertices Unite by Stephen West that I am working on. And I will admit, I have been focusing a lot more recently on those two sweaters versus this. So there is some progress, but not a ton. Last time I showed it to you, I was still on section 1. I am trying to find my little marker. So this is where I was. So I was pretty close to finishing section 1. So I knit the rest of this. This section I did use 2 different colors. It was the Stress Knits Old Pine and then a Chromatic Yarns Eden. And now I am working on section 2, which is another striped section. And I am striping, and I am throwing stitches off my needles. I am striping these 2 colors. So it is this brown and a like dusty blue. I'm really liking the contrast in this section, especially compared to the section 1 that's a little more blended. And so these are my 2 colors. This is a Les Garçons Yak sock, and it is the colorway Mysterious Bear. So that was one of their club colorways. And then this is Playful Day Yarns in the colorway Anne. And this is a superwash merino and nylon blend. So that is the striping that is happening in this section. This section is always fun because you are doing short rows. So each time you knit less and less stitches. And honestly, I'm probably about halfway through this section. If I sat down and focused on it, I could knock it out pretty quickly. I think it is one of the faster sections, especially compared to section 1. And then section 3 is going to be a big one because you pick up all of these section 1 stitches and then your section 2 stitches here, and you knit one section with one color, which is going to be this one. So this one has just kind of gone to the side because I've had a lot of good interest and time to work on some of those other ones, the sweaters. This one I kind of just have, I think it's there when I need it. It's not a main focus, but when I need some garter stitch, less thinking, this one is there. Very easy. It'll keep me busy for a while. And yeah, the only thing that I struggled with is for section 2. I was like, why is that? I was like, I've never had a problem picking up section 2 before. And I was reading it and I was like, why would it tell me to pick up from this side? Like the stitches aren't in the right place. And I was so confused. And it's because I was trying to pick up, I placed my marker on this edge of section 1, and it was supposed to be this edge. So I kept trying to pick up the wrong side and the wrong number of stitches from like the wrong side. And I was like, I swear this pattern was written right before, and now it's not, and something's weird. Nope, I was doing it wrong. The pattern is written correctly. So once I figured out I was picking up on the wrong side, that made things a lot easier, and I do think this is really fun. Yeah. I like how like the brown is tying into here, and there's the slight, I think it'll be a fun color scheme. So yeah, like I said, this one It's not a main focus right now, but it's there for when I need it. I'm knitting it on a US 4, which is a 3.5mm needle. It's all garter stitch, and it's a pretty easy one to kind of have for when you need something a little less mindless or a little more mindless, but also like all you have to keep track of normally is your increases or your decreases. And it's pretty fun. It's a pretty fun pattern. Those are all of my knitting projects. The only other project that I brought to show you is a kind of mending project that I'm doing. So this is our toiletry bag that we normally use when we travel. And this brown fabric here is shedding. And this brown fabric was completely on the bottom. It was shedding pretty bad. I can kind of see if I can kind of show you. So like this is some of the shedding. Either way, I was like, oh, I'm gonna take that to fix it. And Shane, my husband, was like, oh yeah, I saw that it was shedding. It's no big deal. And I was like, I will fix it. So what I've done, I had some leftover waxed canvas. So I cut the piece, I measured this whole piece. So I cut it however long it needed to be. I have folded under. The nice thing with waxed canvas is you can just tear it to the length you want. And then I have just folded under the seam edge. I've pinned on the stitches, and my initial plan was to sew it on my machine. However, this is like too long to get to my machine needle, so I'm hand stitching it. So I have hand stitched just along the edge. I don't even know if you'll be able to see it. Just like a back stitch. And then for this like rounded edge, I tried doing like the back stitch, but there's this cording here that's really hard. And so I've ended up doing like a more whipped stitch. So it's a little more exposed. And I thought at first, like, it kind of bothers me, but also having a shedding bag bothers me more. And I physically like can't do that back stitching very easily. Like doing this whip stitching is exponentially easier to go around the cording versus me trying to go up and like trying to like back stitch along this. Took so much longer and it was really, really hard. So I'd rather have a functional bag versus, I think it's fine. It definitely looks mended, but it's kind of cute. I do think this looks more polished. But overall, that's my plan. I'm just kind of working on this slowly. I took this to a craft night last night because hand sewing is not my favorite thing, but it's nice when you're around other people. I do plan to put another piece of wax canvas kind of over this handle. It is not very thick fabric, so I'm just gonna like kind of fold it over, kind of stitch it down. Similar lines to like this. And then this top part by the zipper is also that same fabric that is shedding. And I at first thought about taking more of this wax canvas and kind of sewing along it, but I kind of think that would be kind of a pain. This fabric is not very thick here. So I think what I might do is I think I'm just gonna do like some long and short embroidery stitches just along this to kind of really secure it down, cover it up, but I can also like not go through the layer of the zipper. I can go through just this like faux suede that's shedding. I had thought about doing satin stitch, which is like the longer stitches, but I think that might snag over time. So I think doing some long and short, which is essentially just like a back stitch, but you kind of vary. Maybe I can put a picture of like a long and short embroidery on the screen since I can't like verbally explain it. But I think that'll be like a nice way to cover it up without like fear of in the future it like snagging as much as like a satin stitch. I need like a sturdier option since this just gets like thrown in bags and around things. So I just had this wax canvas in stash from another project I had made, so I feel good kind of using these leftovers. Wax canvas is also like waterproof, so it'll be good for the toiletry bag. And I just have like my sewing stuff inside of it. So yeah, it's something I'm working on slowly but surely. I just thought it was kind of fun. Thought I might share it here. I have no idea how long this will take me because I'm not like... I was hoping it was going to be like an evening project because I was going to just zip it on my machine. And so it's definitely becoming a little bit longer than I anticipated. But it'll be worth it in the end. I am being stubborn of not buying a new toiletry bag. I love this toiletry bag. It fits all of our stuff nicely. And I just don't want to buy a new one. Like this one can function. It's just shedding. And like it does function. To Shane's point, he was like, oh, it's fine. I just like peel the things off. I just also don't want these little snippets like of stuff over everything whenever we travel. So I'd rather just kind of fix it. So yes, a little mending hand sewing project. Hopefully I can get it done fairly quickly. Anyway, that is all that I have to share with you today. So I appreciate you sitting down and hanging out with me as I share with you my sewing adventures, my current knitting adventures, having to reknit things, what I'm hand sewing, all of that kind of stuff. If you've hung out this long, I greatly appreciate it. I appreciate you choosing to spend time with me. Your time is precious, and so I feel so special that you've decided to come to this little corner of the internet and hang out with me today and keeping me company, and I hope I was able to keep you company as well. As always, I hope you've put a little bit of love into every stitch of your making, and I hope that you can find some knit life balance. I will see you again in about a month for my next monthly recap, and yeah, I hope you have a great day. I will see you soon.